and welcome to another episode of the Black and White Thinking Podcast. You are joined by your hosts, Chick and G.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, sorry there about saying the wrong thing. How's it going?
Tip top, my guy.
Tip top. I was like, what did you say that other? Was it this morning, yesterday morning? Tip top. Is it tip top though?
Yeah.
That's a lie.
And how are you?
Thank you. Yeah, all right. A bit. I'd say I'm kind of tip top, but also sick of the world. I think that's if it was just us in our little bubble, absolutely tip top. The rest of it.
Did you ever try the drink tip top?
No, I didn't know there was such a thing.
The wee carton. Like a wee
What?
rectangular carton.
What colour was it?
Oh, I have a feeling there was a blue one, but I could be wrong. Maybe like a raspberry. And you poked it with a wee straw, or if you didn't have a straw, you turned it upside down and bit off the corner.
Wild.
And drank through the carton.
No, I'm not familiar with
Must have
anything
been a
called
Northern
tip top.
Ireland thing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there've been some stuff I've seen here that I don't see anywhere else. That's true. Okay, so you're tip top. I'm all right. Is there anything interesting been going on recently?
What do you mean?
I can't even remember when we recorded the last podcast, to be honest. I feel like so much has been happening, but at the same time, not much.
I mean, personally, not much, but out there in the big wide world, lots of things happening.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I think the last time I talked, the Donald had been shot.
Oh yeah, now Kamala's up to date. Yeah, that's true. Because we had to update the post to say we recorded this before he stepped down, before Biden stepped down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's when we did the last one. Interesting though, how quickly things have changed.
Yeah.
Oh, we've been watching the Olympics, which is now done. We finished yesterday. Well, this week according to whenever this comes out. But that was great.
It was.
I think that's been nice to just kind of sit and watch all day. Well, not all day. I didn't get to watch it all day, but still, like, good sports.
Yeah,
Gymnastics,
good distraction.
Yeah, very good distraction. But yeah, so we might as well get straight into this one because there's nothing. I was trying to think, like, let's start this in a light-hearted way so that, you know, it's not going to be heavy, but at the same time, we've just talked about the world, and this week's podcast is
Political protests or racist riots.
Political protests or racist riots. I think that's genius, and you came up with that. I've got to give you props for that. Great. Is it alliteration? Yeah, it is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Hooray! So, where did this start from? Because I saw a woman in America that talks about a lot of this stuff, like Palestine and so on. And she said, in her mind, that started because of the killings that happened in Southport. Which, to me, this started way before that. But let's say that's where it did start, because it makes it easier to be able to talk about this. So some guy went and killed kids at a dance school in Southport, and then straight away people in the media, and funnily enough, the first woman's been arrested for giving out false information. The woman basically went out and said it was a Muslim guy that was on the wanted list, blah, blah, blah. He'd done this. So people started to riot. And that's gone around the UK, has reached Northern Ireland. However, the reason I say it doesn't start there is because down south in the Republic of Ireland, there have been protests for...
Yeah, but none of the stuff about the Southport guy was initially true. He was a Rwandan guy born in Wales.
Yeah.
Raised as a Christian.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying, that because of everything that happened there was so much misinformation that they've been the firsts of that type of arrest. AKA, you can't just go online and spout whatever you want because you've started something that's caused people to be targeted. However, the bigger picture is like I'm saying, even before that woman said who she thought was doing it, even though she was wrong, there have been protests on the island of Ireland against immigration. So it just happened to be that in England something else spurred it on. But in my opinion, this has been going on for a long time in different forms and variations.
Well, I mean, we watched a video, or I showed you a video the other day of Tommy Robinson talking about the same stuff like 11 or 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And I said it would be interesting to see how much, if any, of the stuff he prophesized, if you like, has actually come true. Probably none of it.
No.
Like people like him, I feel like they sort of try to blind you with statistics and numbers, but they don't, like, I feel like they rely on their core audience not questioning what they say.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, stuff like this has gone on forever. At one point, the Irish were the immigrants who weren't wanted.
Exactly.
So, and I feel like had the UK not maintained this notion of itself as a global power and got involved in conflicts overseas that are really none of our business, some of these countries, at least, wouldn't be in the condition they are, nor would their citizens feel like they need to run away to somewhere else.
Yeah. Literally risk their lives to get anywhere else.
Like, you hear a lot of talk around illegal immigrants, and then they talk about Muslims and Black and Asian people and blah blah, which it's like a constantly moving target for these people, because I mean, let's face it, I would dare say it wouldn't be that hard to bring out the fact that a lot of the people on these marches haven't really armed themselves with anything very factual. Like, if you just look at Northern Ireland alone, like we talked about, so people here are talking about illegal immigrants. And I know it, like, obviously it's difficult to know numbers of illegal immigrants, but if you look at the actual numbers that we have, like, I think I read somewhere or heard somewhere that, like, only about 70% of asylum applications are approved. And from my experience, just from like different things, and different jobs I've had, getting an insight into some of these things, like the people who come here and claim asylum, first thing they do once they get it is go and get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they're claiming asylum, they're not allowed to claim benefits or work or any of that sort of stuff. And any people that you speak to, or in my experience, who have migrated to Northern Ireland, they get jobs.
Yeah.
And like, if and when they are working and paying taxes and contributing national insurance and all that stuff, if they're entitled to maybe like some tax credits or child benefit, then fine. Because a lot of people here will have never worked and claim benefits their whole lives, and object to somebody else doing that, which is weird.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can have it, but you can't because you're brown.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Wait, there was I don't know if we watched it together, but there was a guy that was interviewed by the BBC a few months ago, and he stayed, so it took a long time. I can't remember exactly how many months it was, but we're going like months going into years, had been going through the process of claiming asylum and wasn't, like you said, wasn't allowed to work, wasn't allowed to really do anything. How are we when the pandemic happened and we were told we can't work, we can't do anything? So he was talking about the fact that he was trying to set something up that, like, there's a board when people are making these decisions, because there are longer implications to even the way that they're treated there. Because if you're being given £30 a week, whatever it's going to be, to manage your family, it's not a lot, that's the point. to look after your family and feed them all, but you're staying in this dingy little place and you can't really go anywhere, you can't do much, you're in a new land, you can't really speak the language. All of this, you could have been helping them integrate into society so that by the time they've claimed that asylum, it's easier to navigate. But then you're having to deal with mental health on top of everything else. And we already don't have support for that for the people of the land, whatever country you're in, never mind then the people that you're then causing extra harm to that have already come to run away from that. So you're not giving people an escape to at least try and do something with the day. And then when you decide that they're all right, you can now be part of society, the people that are trying to make a difference, we were talking about places in like Belfast, the people destroying those areas. So
yeah, they're complaining about immigrants, illegal immigrants, whatever, and Muslims. And yeah, they're just setting fire to the roads in the places they live.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. It's almost like they've just, whoever it is creating this rhetoric around people coming here, it doesn't exist in the way that they've been led to believe that it exists.
Yeah.
Like I made the point the other day about, well, look what happened whenever the whole Russia-Ukraine thing kicked off, and how here the Ukrainians were all welcomed. People were, they were given places in schools, so on and so forth, and nobody really batted an eyelid.
No, if anything. So, and it's funny that the reason I agreed to doing this podcast with you is because I think we can have a good discussion about this. But ultimately, I avoid having these conversations with people because, so for people's background, if you've never listened to us or you don't know who we are or who I am, especially, I work in marketing. I'm an immigrant and a child of immigrants, and I own a business and hire people. So I've now got to see this from different points of view, but also I grew up in predominantly white areas and now live in a predominantly white area.
Well, Northern Ireland is a white country, primarily. So it's not that there are predominantly white areas.
It's going to change, though.
But the whole place.
Yeah.
Like 97% of the population is white.
There you go. So actually, that even proves the point I'm trying to make, that growing up in Sheffield, I saw the arguments that people are having now happen back then. And as areas did start to have populations of different ethnicities and so on. But Ukraine, so whilst no one wants people to be killed or anything like that to happen, but from a black person's point of view, I was seeing black people not being allowed to get on trains, buses, whatever for safety.
Yeah.
I followed people's journey who were documenting things on Twitter. Oh, it was Twitter back then, X, whatever it is now.
Mostly students
who were basically being told, you are not good enough, we don't care about your life, so get off, get away, and they're having to walk miles, thousands of miles. So again, here I am seeing Ukrainians being allowed in or other people being allowed in that would look at other people and go, well, you're beneath me. And then when these arguments start, it's like, well, who's better? And why is it that the only reason you're saying they're okay is because they've got white skin? But other than that, they are still immigrants.
Yep.
It's just been that they've been given a different set of rules. And whenever I talk to people about, because people hear my accent, and I've had a few people to me say, oh, but you don't count. What do you mean I don't count? I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born in the UK. My parents weren't born in the UK. And when I explain how my parents were brought over, it's like, oh, what? So my mum is a nurse. And every so often when there's a lack of people in a particular area of a job, the government will put a call out and say, we need doctors, we need nurses, we need engineers, we need whatever. And they will change the laws to make sure that they get in a particular skill set for an amount of time. So at the time my mum was applying, it was either the UK or Australia. And in her mind, she was like, well, whatever letter comes back first, that's where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have made more sense to be in England and Sheffield because my auntie was there. And it just happened to be that that's the way that things worked out. So again, you're looking at immigration and you're grouping, because you had something on earlier when I walked in, and it was like, we're not saying all immigration's bad.
No, the person went, we're not racist, we're scared.
But then another one was saying, it's not that all immigration's bad. But to me, everything's been grouped as being bad. There's no separation of, like, there's a guy from Belfast who's been here for the guts of 35 years that had a Turkish place in town, and his windows got knocked in, his life got threatened. You cannot tell if someone is already a part of a community. All you can see is there's something in different writing, a different language, whatever else, and everyone is being grouped into that one. My safety here, I've always known it's as soon as I open my mouth, people then go, "Oh, okay," and it's okay. So I find it really difficult sometimes to have these conversations because it's not that I don't want to have them; it's that it's so complex, and it's not just as easy as people turn around and say we're protesting, like that person was saying, "Oh, we don't feel safe." Well, what do you mean you don't feel safe?
But they don't know. They can't. Like, I've never heard anybody on that side of it actually articulate a valid point.
Yeah.
Like, again, if we just focus on Northern Ireland, people are talking about Muslims. Well, when you, like, I think at the last census, which was 3 years ago, this country was over 3/4 identified as Christian. About 15 or so percent identified as no religion, which then leaves, like, what's that? Like 90%. I think it's slightly more than that, but and then there's ones like maybe a couple of percent identified as other religion.
Yeah.
So really, and again, when you look at the numbers, net migration to Northern Ireland, a couple of thousand people.
Yeah.
The percentage of non-white people total here, it's just now at about 3 or 4%.
Yeah.
So it's a nonsense to say that the Muslims are coming here and taking over.
Yeah.
Well, and the breakdown doesn't even specify Muslim or whatever that I could see. It just specified other. It's about 1.6% identify as other. So in that could be a whole range of religions.
Yeah.
So it's such a nonsense that such a small percentage of people here are causing problems to the point where your life is affected.
Yeah.
And as I've said before, the people coming here aren't the issue. The people here that are the issue are the politicians.
Yeah.
And the groups who have terrorized their communities for decades.
Yeah.
And the politicians are complicit in that too. Like, they've stoked the fires of division for far too long, where now that people are uniting against this, like, boogeyman character that they've been told is a real threat to their way of life. But it's such a nonsense. And, like, you've had high profile unionist politicians talking nonsense about Islam and stuff in the past. Like, it's just such a, like, it's so misguided, and I've yet to hear anybody who has been interviewed or attended or has the views of immigrants and Muslims are the issue. They've never articulated any point that has ever, first of all, made sense, or has even secondly has sounded valid.
Yeah.
And, like, I even saw Stephen Nolan was interviewing a guy in South Belfast, and he was talking about how the Muslims are the problem, and how in Sandy Row all the shops are now taken over by foreigners. But they took over empty lots, vacant lots.
Yeah.
So the people who were running them arguably just didn't do enough to keep their business going, or couldn't keep their business going.
Yeah.
And again, they then closed the shops and sold them. And the people were like, well, I could run a business.
Yeah.
So that's all they did was take on a lease and start a business.
But that's it, because you're also saying about selling them. Some of these people are choosing to hold on to them and rent them out. So again, it's still going to the same economy, the same communities.
Yeah, it's still money being spent in that community that then goes into the national, the national coffers, I feel like. But it just, some of it is young guys just out causing a bit of mischief, throwing stuff at the police, which has happened here for decades, and nothing ever really happens to them. Like, then year after year after year, You see people throwing petrol bombs at the police, setting fire to Land Rovers, and then I don't ever recall hearing of any convictions for anything like that.
Yeah, because even here, so we were talking about this in England, they're talking about these arrests that they're making for the people that have been going to the protests. And here, the only thing I've not seen politicians condemning this for what it is, but I saw people talking about the police officer in Armagh that was driving around with a Irish flag. Why is that?
It wasn't even an Irish flag, it was an Armagh flag.
As if. So I thought it was an Irish flag. So it's just an Armagh flag. Because it was a GAA and it's the police, but that's a community police officer. So why are you bothered about a good thing and a community that have accepted something in the past that would have been a problem? People are moving forward, people are getting more educated, people are going, oh, actually, you're all right. But here you are trying to drag that back into the limelight when there are things going on. Businesses are shutting down at the moment. Like I was in town on Friday, empty. You'd have thought it was a Sunday afternoon.
Because most decent people are wanting no part of any of it.
Exactly.
But I don't care if a politician says they condemn something, because it's just words.
Yeah, it's true.
For far too long here, it's all been just words. Like they never actually do anything of substance. They never do anything to make people's lives better. There's no.
We don't have a government.
Proper. Well, no, we do.
Are they back working properly though? Oh, but all right, summer recess.
Yeah,
but
call back for recess, which happens every year. They've been back in for. Sure, had an election.
Yeah, we had the election, but they've not done anything for the past few years.
They never do anything. They were not working for a long time. They'll say they were attending the constituency issues, which is nonsense anyway. Yeah. But they just don't do enough. They spend too long bickering and party political divides, and so I personally don't care if a politician is on TV saying that they condemn this or calling it racist or whatever it may be. A lot of it is out and out racism. They can say they're scared or they, it's illegal immigrants coming here need to be dealt with and whatever. To me, without foreign nationals coming here, we wouldn't have a health service. Yeah. We wouldn't have the likes of care homes for older people, disabled people, whatever. Yeah. We all see or have had any experience of those. Yeah. It's mostly foreign people who do the hardest jobs in those places. Yeah. And even from as long as I can remember, I've had, when I was a kid, I had issues with my ears and stuff and went to the hospital. It was an Indian doctor. And that's gone back 25 or more years. Yep. Longer. Yeah. So it's been a thing that foreign nationals have propped up a lot of our services. Yep. A lot of the food service and hospitality industry is the same. And it's like that old argument, oh, they're taking jobs away from locals. People here won't do those jobs. They'd rather sit and claim benefits and not work because they think they're too good for certain jobs. Yep. And it's easy then to project that onto some, like I said, some figure, some mythical figure that they don't even have experience of. Yeah. If you speak to, I imagine if you speak to these people, and I have experienced it before directly, where I've had somebody spout some racist nonsense and say, do you know anybody who's not from Northern Ireland? And the answer invariably is no. Yeah. Well, I worked for a big food company, so like your Tesco or whatever, but for here. And when Brexit was happening, it was one of the biggest stresses because they were like, well, the people that would have worked on the farms and would have worked in distribution and whatever else, they were leaving. Europeans specifically were leaving to go back home because it was like, well, what's the point? Whereas, again, looking at, because how do I explain this? So let's say people coming from Europe, the agreement there was you could be less skilled than if you go out to likes of Africa. So if you see immigrants from Africa, they will have, most of us, we joke, but most of us will have a background where our parents, relatives, nurses, doctors, particular types of jobs. So when these people were then going, all right, well, I can just go back home and I'm from Europe. I don't want to deal with all of this.
the shortage, we look at hospitality now, there's still a massive shortage in hospitality. So when people say, oh, taking our jobs, the jobs are there.
Yeah.
You don't want to work those jobs. It's on the news all the time that these places are short staffed. How many places have we seen closed down? Yes, of course, there's a rise of cost for everything, but we've seen a lot of these places also shut down because that is a part of the problem. If you cannot get the staff, you cannot open. It's as simple as that. So where's your argument?
Yeah, the focus is wrong. The focus shouldn't be on people coming here for whatever reason they're coming here. And whilst it is hard to track, it's probably fair to say that most of the immigrants here are here legally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you see the small boats crossing the channel to England. They're not then coming on to here.
Yeah.
They're probably going to England for a start because they know somebody there.
Yeah.
Or, on the mainland somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, they're not coming here. Most people who come here and through the asylum or refugee process, a lot, like, I would say the vast, vast majority of it is done through legal means.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, when you think about it as a human being being another human being, if somebody's country has been bombed out of civil war
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it may be, why wouldn't you offer them some sort of sanctuary?
Yeah, because you want the same done to you.
And again, from my experience, most immigrants that I have encountered over the years, as soon as their paperwork is approved and they've got their visas and whatever, they go and get a job.
Yeah.
And typically they'll send money
Back home. Yeah. So they're working hard to support.
And a lot of times they'll have more than one job.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the arguments you hear against it, it's just a total nonsense. It's total misinformation. Yeah. Very little of it, if any, is true. And again, if people like Tommy Robinson and Britain First and BNP and whoever it may be, mm-hmm. they rely on people not questioning what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like, it just, like, that thing, that classic line of, I'm not racist, but if you're not racist, you don't need to tell people that.
Yeah.
And like, when you see the people on these marches, oh, I'm not racist. I mean, let's call it what it is. It just smacks of racism.
Yeah.
Like, it just, I can't see anything other than that. And part of why I feel that way is because whenever the whole Ukraine thing happened and the Ukrainians were coming here, I didn't see any protests about immigrants coming here.
Yeah, or people not being safe.
The asylum and refugee system.
Yeah.
It seems a lot of people do from
and being fast tracked
various places in the world. But again, a lot of people come to Northern Ireland legally, and as soon as they're here legally, they go and get a job.
Yeah, but also, sorry, because you're talking about, let's say, the whole island of Ireland. Most people still think things are still backwards here, so it's already not on the map for people to go, I am going to claim asylum on the island of Ireland, because they think that the troubles are still here. So if we go by logic, like you've said, if someone's normally going to England, they don't end up here because the first point of call is England. England is more famous in general.
But can you imagine that your average Syrian person even knows about Northern Ireland?
But that's what I mean in general, because people aren't saying positive things to then talk about, oh, Ireland is a place that you should go. Northern Ireland is a place that you should go.
But even the notion that Ireland's full.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Like, even if you just go up briefly on the Google Maps and look at Ireland.
Yeah.
It's green all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, again, to me, the issue goes back to politicians not doing enough.
Yeah.
They haven't built enough social housing.
Yep.
They haven't they haven't done enough. They haven't sorted
the education system as well.
Education, healthcare, whatever it may be. It just cuts. And, like, I feel like a fraction of a percentage of people who have come to your country cannot be blamed for what what you perceive to be the ills of your life.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I just feel like it's people who really have nothing better to do.
Yeah.
Than they just have nothing better to do.
Yeah.
Like, if they really, you know, they say they care about their community, so they go out and smash it up, wreck places,
exactly,
and break windows in cars,
yeah,
and throw bricks through windows. Like, there's that woman in the northeast, went out to work, came back from a 12-hour shift. The front windscreen of her car had been smashed and a brick thrown through her window.
Ridiculous.
She works in healthcare.
Absolutely ridiculous.
So she's been out looking after, you know, potentially our friends and relatives and colleagues and whatever, for them to come home and say, nah, she has to go.
Yeah.
So who's going to take her place?
Exactly.
Who's going to look after the sick
exactly.
people? Like, it's mental, and it's like, in a way, I feel sorry for these people that they've been tricked and duped into feeling that somebody who practices a particular religion is a threat to their way of life, because it's just not true. Like, it's just not true. And even further, most people who are practicing a particular religion are usually very outward looking and will do a lot for their communities.
Yeah.
You know, they'll help their, even just on a micro level.
Yeah.
They'll help their neighbour, they'll take food round to an elderly person, or you know, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So, like, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to me. And maybe, I don't know, maybe my experience growing up here isn't typical of most, in that I have met a lot of people from different parts of the world who have come here, or even, you know, people who were born here, you know, children of immigrants born here and whatever. Like they just don't really have any intention other than to get on and live their life, and try and give their children or the rest of their family a better life that they couldn't necessarily have had elsewhere.
But this is also where I'd also say, on the flip side of that, and this is me saying this as a black person, I'm also not, what would the word be? I'm not happy with some of the things that I'm also seeing other people of colour post about, because this is our home. This is our community. So I talk about, I've had one negative, like really negative experience here where, yes, I did feel like my life was in danger, but my dad has always said to me, even when, like before I'd thought of moving here, when we used to come and visit, my dad would try and explain the history of here a bit more, and told us, read up, educate yourselves about this place, because if you're then choosing to go into town on your own or do whatever, you need to understand what's happening. And for me, Dad always talked about July and just said, don't get yourself involved, like you'll be fine, but do not get yourself involved in anything to do with July. And it's only when I moved here, happened to, because a road was closed, I got caught in a parade. And obviously then I know mob mentality, when people, like young kids, like you're saying, young boys, whatever, getting excited and people smacking my car, that's the one and only time I've ever felt unsafe. So in 7-8 years, am I going to put that one experience to say, oh, I don't like this place?
That's also on you.
No, but I had nowhere else to go.
No, but you don't go out. If it was on the 12th?
No, it wasn't on the 12th.
Or another time where there might have been a parade?
No, but
don't go out.
But I wouldn't have known that at that point, because when this happened, it wasn't the 12th. And
but that's still on you.
No, but you're saying that, but this is where I'm saying you can say that's still on me, but for people that move here that aren't that familiar, I was at least a bit more familiar with the landscape because of Dad, and because Dad said, educate yourself. But there are people that are looking at NI going, cheaper cost of living, like there are loads of factors that are to do with the way that the world is right now, which comes back to governments, that are then going, well, I'll have a better quality of life in Northern Ireland, or the island of Ireland, wherever you want to go. Fair enough. However, for me, that one situation, I would have never driven into, and that was me going just directly into East Belfast, where my church is. So this was an area I was familiar with, a main road. So for me, as I was driving down the street, I saw a few flags start to come up. There was bunting on the sides, and I thought, oh, that's different. And then that ensued. Would I have been driving that way normally? No, I wouldn't. But in general, I would, because that is the main road, and you wouldn't expect anything there. So even for me, on an educated, slightly educated perspective, I ended up getting caught in that. And I was fine eventually, but it scared me. And that was the one time I had to think to myself, who do I call in this instant? Because either they're going to hear a Catholic or they're going to hear an immigrant. It was safer for me to go to the police and say, could you help me? I'm clearly lost. Direct me. And they told me to follow a police van. And the police were kind. They did look at me like, well, how the hell did you get yourself caught in this? Yeah. And obviously, I'm asking myself that. But like you're saying, you're also saying you wouldn't get caught in stuff like that. So even to understand the way that this place works, that one experience for me isn't the reason that I would turn around and be like, no, people shouldn't come here, shouldn't visit, shouldn't go here, whatever else. I now know how to navigate myself more and more in this place to understand where I should be. Like, Adesola's moved here. That's one of my members of staff. And I've been teaching her. Certain roads you will see X, Y, Z. Certain roads you stay clear of. Like most areas. Sheffield didn't be the same. We'd have known the areas that you shouldn't be walking on your own at night. As a woman, you shouldn't be walking on your own, and so on. It doesn't change. However, things here are a little bit more complex. But what I don't like is, if we are choosing to settle here as people that weren't born here as well, you also can't, you can highlight racism, you can highlight things being negative, but you also can't just jump on this wagon of Ireland is racist, because Ireland is not racist. There are pockets of people that are less educated or not educated that will be racist, and for some people it's just, you are not an us, you are a them. And that them could be as simple as, you are not a Catholic, you are not Protestant. That's how easily it boils down to. So it's not even as if it's a them as in you have a different colour skin. Because I was saying to you, I walked to the shops last week and it felt like people were going out of their way to make me feel safe, as in smiling and saying hello. Now, again, for years I've got blogs about having a breakdown and just feeling like I was wearing this mask in the corporate world, in the world of who I had to present myself as. But I bought a house here. I have a home here. I'm building life with you here. I'm choosing to do that because I love this place. The majority of people are kind, but everywhere you will go, you will find there'll be someone that isn't going to be that kind to you. I've gone back to Zambia and being like, why am I being treated like an other? I'm one of you. And there'll be people that have been on my own podcast that are from Zambia, or like young girls that will be similar to me that will go, yeah, I don't feel like I fit in anywhere. And for me, that's something that I embrace, because I think I get to embrace different cultures from where I've lived and where I've grown up and take the best of all of those. But that's also how you get yourselves educated, because not everything is negative, but also it's not that everything is positive. But if you sit there and you keep this rhetoric of, this place is horrible, everyone's racist, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, there's always definitely more good than bad. But in relation to these protests, it's not even an undertone. It feels to me it's just outright racism. And thankfully, when you see some of the footage, the counter protests, by far and away outnumber the people complaining about immigrants.
But also, you were saying, so we were watching the news, and you pointed out the range of people that were at the counter protests. But I think that's also where these discussions are healthy, whether we agree or not, or whether people agree or not, because who is it that's supposed to be fighting for some of these things? And I'd said, well, I wouldn't be looking out for black people there, because if I told my parents, like I remember when I went to the Black Lives Matter march with my friend Daniela, who was white, my parents were like, what are you doing? You are putting yourself in the thick of it. You can get attacked. So, where does this, where can people make a change? Like, where does it start from?
I mean, if you're at a point in your life where you're blaming such a small population, or such a small percentage of, like a minuscule percentage of our population, for the problems in your life, I feel like I guess the way around it is, these people need to take some responsibility. Just take absolute responsibility for their own life. Because you can't you can't be blaming another group of people for the problems in your life. As I said like earlier, to me the issue here is the paramilitary organizations who have terrorized this country for decades and still do every day. Like they'll masquerade under whatever guise they like, but ultimately they're drug dealers and extortionists, and that's what they do. They terrorize their communities, and for a long time they were aided and abetted by politicians preaching division. So the focus for all of us should be that big white building at the top of the hill in Dundonald. It shouldn't be a fraction of a percentage of the population. Like to blame Muslims is nonsense. To blame, black and brown people for the problems in your life in Northern Ireland is nonsense. Without people coming here, they would like the healthcare system alone would fall apart. Like it just wouldn't survive, and it's hanging on by a thread at the minute. Like the focus should be the politicians and also those groups in our society who, let's face it, none of us want. None of us want, and it's not people of color of any kind. It's the criminal gangs here who, to a degree, the police are culpable to an extent because they let them do it in a way because to an extent they police some of the places they live. So it stops them having to do it. So there's a bigger issue at play, and a lot of that falls on the shoulders of politicians. And like I said, I don't care if they publicly condemn it because what they say and what they do are very different things. And I think they just don't do enough and have never done enough over the years. It's like in some ways I feel pity for those people who feel like it's a Muslim or the Muslim community here's fault for the problems in their life.
Oh, why pity?
Because what a sorry existence that you feel like you have such a bad life that you have to blame it on a Muslim person. Like it's mental. Like it's completely mental. Like it makes no sense. How like I would love to ask them, in what way does the Muslim community here affect your life? And like further to that, have they ever even met or interacted with a Muslim person? Probably not.
And it's funny you say that as well, because
I feel like to a larger degree it's ignorance and not necessarily stupidity. Some people, yes, they're just idiots, but I feel like it's just a lack of experience.
But I also look at like Belfast, especially. Like I said, 7, 8 years I've lived here now, and in that time I've seen it become more multicultural. So I've seen the good and the bad. But on the good side, I absolutely love how, to me, this place has a bit more uniqueness in terms of like even the food places that I'd go to. I loved it here because there were independents. So what's that going to foster? More independents opening rather than chains. And if those independents open and it's people that have like that, I said to you, a Syrian place opened and I really wanted to try that. And I was like, interesting. There's more like there's Lebanese food.
Yeah, well, exactly. The ridiculousness of it all is that on the way home they'll stop and get a kebab or a Chinese. Like it's just dumb. Like to me, they try and paint it as a political protest. To me, it's just racist nonsense. And rioting in your own community and wrecking your own streets and shops and people's houses and cars and buildings in your own community is nonsense. And the focus should be shifted to the politicians and the paramilitary groups here who have all terrorized this for far too long. Like it's not a political protest if you're going out and ripping off the streets where you live and attacking innocent people for just actually trying to do what all of us want, is have a peaceful and happy life.
But I'd also say even for the likes of like the Republic where there were those riots in the first place anyway, and the likes of England. In England, to me, the issue there as well is these are the problems of the past as well. colonization in general, there's this rhetoric of we're better than. You're not better than. Here I see people all the time talking about wanting to migrate to like Australia because you want to be in the sun more and blah blah blah. And I've got people that I know here from when I first moved that have moved. So again, it's like, to me, you spent what, less than 5 minutes googling what's net migration, how many others live here. If it doesn't even take you that long to figure that out, use your brain, critical thinking. Just do a bit of research to see what you're complaining about, because how is it fair for you to go into other countries and live there and do all these things, and yet it's not fair for someone else to do the exact same thing? The work that I do, I could go out as a nomad, and during the pandemic I did look at other countries that I could move to because there were incentives that if you stayed there for so long you'd get cheaper accommodation or you get a visa or all these different things. And I was very close to doing that because that's out there. But why is it fair for you to do that, but it isn't for other people to want a better life?
I think that's a moot point because these people, 20% of our population doesn't own a passport, so...
But they'll know someone that's moved,
no,
is
no,
my
but
point.
I think that's not a relevant point because these people aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to stay in Northern Ireland. They might go on holiday to Spain once a year and they'll happily go there on holiday, but those people aren't the people who are going to be emigrating somewhere anyway.
But
they just don't want brown people coming here.
No, but you're also categorising these people because for what I saw during Black Lives Matter, when all that stuff started kicking off, there was a group had have gone, you guys clearly aren't educated enough, let's say, you're a group. And then there were those people in between that I'd have looked at and gone, oh, you've got a bit more sense, so you'll get what I'm talking about. And they wouldn't have been in that category of no passports. So there are people that also hide the true intentions or how they truly feel. So when I'm talking about this critical thinking as well, if you know people in your family, you yourself might want to go, there's this group of people that it's hypocritical is what I'm saying. And yes, that might be a moot point in that sense, but it doesn't mean that they do not know someone or have people around them. Even holidays, that type of stuff. Again, why is it okay? I know people aren't coming here for a holiday, but even then, like, how do you know the people you're attacking that they're a refugee or an immigrant or they're on holiday? Because again, this place is becoming a place that people are trying to get more tourism. So how are you going to be able to deduct that? And that's why the example I gave before was, I always know that no matter where I am, as soon as I open my mouth, I'm safer because of my accent.
Yeah, they just don't want people coming here for some weird reason.
So education, speak to your politicians and go fight them, is what I'm hearing you say.
I don't even know that it's education, it's just...
But it is education, because look at here.
Yeah, but I feel like that implies that, I guess I feel like it implies a lack of intelligence. I feel like it's a lack of experience and ignorance. For the most part, let's face it, some people who have certain beliefs like that are idiots, but I feel like it boils down to just simply a lack of experience.
But that experience starts in school, that's my point. When we were growing up, we'd have learnt about different...
If our population is 97% white, you're still not gonna have experience, for the most part, of other cultures.
But for example, you guys are a perfect example. How much were you taught about the history of Ireland?
We were taught a very narrow portion of it.
That's you from your point of view. And when I talk to people that would have grown up, that would have gone to schools that would have been slightly different to yours, on the other side, again, it's different. But that's what I mean in terms of the curriculum. Because I look at, like, my best friend being a teacher, they've brought stuff in where they talk more about the history of here, which I wouldn't have been taught about that growing up. I've seen them take kids to mosques and synagogues.
Yeah, we do that here. You do church visits and whatever, and
but you can do a church visit. But I think there's still an element of, if you make these things, like, it's not an issue to start with, and it's just a part of what?
Why is it on the schools?
But it's not on the schools; it's on the government because it's the curriculum.
Surely it's on the parents.
Oh, it's on the parents as well.
Children.
But it's on everyone. But ultimately, at some point of that being changed, there are some parents right now that aren't going to change the way that they think. So what's going to happen? It's the schools. If their kids are in school, that's also where it'll be. There's no one easy solution where it's like you'll just click your fingers and everyone's fixed. It's on how we take it. And that's the thing. Like, my mind at the moment is boggled in terms of my work, because I look at market and I love the work that I do, but it also frustrates me because it's so easy for people to be lied to and to be given information in a way that's going to make them think that that little bit where they're leaning is the right way of thinking. So again, that comes back to governments and policies. So no matter what, even whether you're an adult or not, yes, you have to educate yourself and do a bit of research, but this comes back to going back to governments to make sure that for the future generations, things have to start changing, because the way that the world is right now and the way that people consume information and go out and react on that, it's affecting societies in a negative way. And it's not going to change when the cost of living is still going up. So what are people going to do? They're going to keep moving around to wherever things are cheaper. I'm now seeing people talk about, like, most people in London are wanting to move up north. Up north has been ignored for so long. That's going to be another problem. And that, what are they going to turn around there and say, again, it's to do with immigration? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one positive out of it all is that there are more people who don't believe all the racist rhetoric online or whatever you would call it than believe it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I guess that's reassuring to a degree that most people just aren't bothered.
Yeah.
Like they just get on with their life and do their thing and don't really worry too much about what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And the fact that more people came out as a counter protest to the idiots who are throwing stuff and wrecking the place than were actually on the side of the anti-immigration protest or whatever you would call it. I feel like it's almost like, well, not even almost, they've been radicalized.
Yeah.
So like they have been radicalized against foreigners coming here, and it's difficult to de-radicalize somebody. So I don't think there's an answer or a solution to those people who are already out on the streets.
Right, I get you.
I think the only thing that you can do is show up in number against them. But at some point, we all should really need to get together and focus our attention and ask more of our politicians.
Yeah. Yeah. But also not being afraid for the people around you that aren't white. Ask questions, talk to people.
Or just Google it. I mean,
well, yeah, Google it. I'm not saying you should be educated by someone that's not white, because again, I'd always say go and read.
Because like books. any black person I've ever known gets so bored of having to be the educator on race relations.
Yeah, I don't mean that, because I wouldn't want to do that. But for example, like our cleaner, she asked me, is it okay to say this? And she's someone that worries about coming off as being racist, and that's how I know she's not racist, because she cares about saying the right thing and being a good person.
Yeah, but again, inform yourself. We have
But people are different. So some of the questions she's asked me...
There's so much information out there that, again, responsibility, just do a little bit of learning yourself and open your mind a little bit and just try and teach yourself something.
But it doesn't mean that there are going to people...
Because it's like that thing
don't want to answer you.
Whenever, like, the whole Islamic extremism issue blew up, and the rhetoric around that was, well, the Muslim community need to sort this out.
Yeah, it shouldn't. That's not what I'm saying. Because I wouldn't. It's draining.
I know, but we all have our part to play.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't rely on one group to teach us about the issues related to that group.
Yeah.
Because we all have access to the same information to a degree. So I feel like we all take responsibility for our own behaviour.
Yeah.
And that includes how we treat other people.
Yeah. But I guess maybe from my point of view then, that's why I like the way that our cleaner's done it, because I don't get asked questions all the time. I know what her and her family are like. So again, for the sake of answering one or two questions every so often, that's not a problem to me, because to me at least, they try to educate themselves where they can and try to be good people. So whilst I don't believe it's on one group to sort everything out, and especially for me, like I said, is I don't like talking about some of these things myself, because I don't want to get dragged into that. It's mentally draining, physically draining. Like at the moment, I'm like, whatever's going on in the world, I just want to shut myself away from it, because it's ridiculous. And even the title of this podcast, someone out there will comment saying, oh, that's not right. And
well, yeah, but if somebody felt the need to say that, oh, you're wrong, the protests aren't racist, I feel like if that is a response you feel you need to make, then surely you're confirming that in fact it is racist, because if it wasn't, you wouldn't need to clarify.
Yeah.
And I've yet to hear anybody give an argument or provide genuine facts about why they believe it's a weird mix of Muslims and illegal immigrants, of which there are very few here.
Yeah.
So I can't understand it in any context other than it just being racism.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird because it feels like the target of their anger isn't clear.
Yeah.
So if it's not clear from the outside, then it hasn't been articulated very well in whatever media there is anyway.
Yeah.
And like I'll read around, like I'll click into some of the rags that I wouldn't ordinarily read and see what they're saying.
Yeah.
I'll watch podcasts of people who I don't like just to see what their issue is.
Yeah.
And it seems to be there's a lot of it pointing the finger at Muslims, but then also illegal immigrants. And then I've heard people on phone-ins on radio shows saying about black people as well.
Yeah.
And like, it's just weird. Like, to me, it doesn't seem anything other than racists out rioting.
Yeah.
Because the only thing I ever really hear is them explaining that it's not racist.
Yeah.
So then what is the point?
Yeah.
I've yet to hear anybody articulate in any sort of sensible way why they're actually out protesting against illegal immigrants. Because let's face it, there are very few of them here.
Yeah. There's a lot of ingrained hate as well. Systemic hate in general. So
yeah, it just seems odd.
Yeah. So when you, obviously, as you've said anyway, but just to clarify, you believe...
I feel like it's racism. It can't really be called anything else if you're out protesting against somebody.
Yeah.
Let's face it, because they're brown.
Yeah.
Or black, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, but also when you don't have a specific reason.
Yeah. The only reason that I've heard is, well, they're coming here illegally.
And like you've said, a little bit of Googling.
They're not.
And yeah. Yeah. Happy days. Well, not happy days, but... Yeah, interesting. And we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. But I guess it also, like... I think when we have conversations like this, it starts from home and in our little communities, and that's it. You can only help your own community to start with. So if you're going to exert that much energy, do that towards helping your community.
Yeah, not tearing it apart and
Yeah.
setting fire to things.
Because if you don't like whatever else has been done, ignore that for now. Help your community, and then when the time comes, if you do need to vote, like you said, march, go to Stormont,
Yeah.
do those things, because ultimately, you burning people out and doing whatever else, is that actually going to get them away, or are they just going to be from one area to another?
Yeah, how is it the fault of the guy running a cafe?
Exactly.
That your life's shit?
Exactly. Wild. Great, thanks. Yeah. Any questions, send them. Keep liking, subscribing, commenting as you normally do, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.